What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be the long-awaited Mastery Showcase, my Mastery setup for 2025. I've actually been running this setup for, I think, 2 or 3 years at this point, and it's been my staple, my standard setup for 99% of content. Certain pieces of content like arena and other stuff where I'm like trying to get things down in maybe a timely manner would require me to put on recoil, and I'll show off all of my mastery setups in this video. So yeah, let's just start with the main setup here. We'll go through the whole tree, and then I'll talk about my alternative setups as well. So some key things to note here. I run 4 out of 5 in deep wounds, and I also run 1 in unfazed. I almost said inequity. It's unfazed. So this comes in handy sometimes. Unfazed is mostly like a sort of annoying defense thing, but it does come in handy from time to time on offense with champions who can evade. Although for the most part, it's somewhat of a hindrance in, if not for the most part, it's somewhat of a hindrance in specific situations, but for the most part, it is useful to have just as a safety net. So unfazed is kind of an interesting mastery that I run. Running 5 out of 5 deep wounds definitely makes sense, and it would make sense for my whole setup here, and it wouldn't cause me any friction. But I like to have at least 1 point on unfazed just for some safety. Obviously, 3 to 3 despair, kind of a staple, sort of a necessary mastery to have, one of the most important masteries in the entire game. And then, of course, I run 4 out of 5 deep wounds. No points in assassin. No points in assassin anymore. I used to, like, religiously run points in assassin, but over the past couple of years, there have been champions that have come out that kind of punish ability accuracy reduction because there's a sort of a necessary guarantee that defensive kits sort of have, and when you take some of that away and assassin is reducing the chance for things to trigger, perfect example being things rock stacks, you can get yourself in sort of a sticky situation where if you haven't pushed him over 15 because of assassin and he throws a special, then you're just kind of screwed and you lose either a lot of time or a lot of health or both. So I don't run assassin anymore, but it is a useful mastery to run in like questing content because for the most part, you're not going to have to worry about those sorts of interactions coming into play, especially more recent questing content where ability accuracy reduction is prevented for like bosses in certain quest lanes. So it's fine to run for questing content, but for the most part, I do not run assassin. And then looking at the tree here, I only have 1 out of 3 in courage, and I used to run 3 out of 3, but I've learned that you don't necessarily need the 20% attack boost. 10%, that's plenty. 10% is absolutely plenty. And if you're playing well, you're not going to be below 50%, so you don't have to worry about the mastery being maxed out. You shouldn't be focusing on a mastery that wants you to be at lower health. You should focus on masteries like Deep Wounds or like Despair that reward you for staying healthy and utilizing your character's abilities. So that is the offensive setup. I'm not really going to focus too much on the precision and cruelty masteries. It's kind of a standard build for the most part. But let's move on into defense here. So obviously 3 out of 3 recovery, again, one of the most essential masteries to have. It's not a game changer, but it is considerably noticeable when you have it versus when you don't have it. So recovery, I vouch for recovery every single day of the week. 10 out of 10 times I vouch for recovery. And then willpower. So I used to run a couple points in willpower. I think I ran 2 points in it at one point. But you don't necessarily need to run max willpower or even 2 points. That single point, that's all you need. All you need is the 1 point in willpower. Willpower, honestly, is outside of parry and dexterity, I'd say willpower is probably the most important mastery for an account to have at any level in the game. Willpower is just so ridiculous, so insane. And if you don't have willpower and you have parry dexterity, the first mastery you should focus on getting is willpower. It is perhaps the most important mastery in the entire game outside of parry and dex. It is crazy. And then I run 3 out of 3 in Inequity. Inequity is a mastery I did not necessarily consider useful back in the day, but in the past couple of years I have understood the value tenfold of running max inequity. I really enjoy the attack rating reduction you get, especially at that max rank. You don't need that many debuffs on the opponent to benefit from that 36% reduction. It's only 6 debuffs at 3 out of 3. Now, the good thing about inequity is the max attack rating reduction is capped. The only thing that increases with the inequity ranks is the percentage each debuff reduces attack by. So even if you can't run max inequity, just having 1 point in inequity is better than not having it, because even if you only have a couple of debuffs on the opponent, you're still getting a minimal attack rating reduction, and that can save you chip damage, that can save you damage from damage over time effects, and a lot of stuff like that. So I highly, highly recommend running inequity. Moving to the front of the page here, block proficiency, run that 4 to 4 at all times, pretty essential. And then stand your ground. So I run 5 out of 5 stand your ground. You don't necessarily need 5 out of 5 stand your ground, but it's very nice to have, and it legitimately comes in use on offense more often than you'd think. Sometimes you're in a fight, you're kind of going with the flow of it, you're in the rhythm, and the opponent just throws an off-kilter random heavy, and you're blocking, but you resist because stand your ground. That has happened more than one time to me. So stand your ground obviously has crazy defensive value, but offensively speaking, it comes in clutch a lot more often than you might think. So while you don't need max stand your ground, just having some points, ideally, like if you want a good baseline point, 3 out of 5 is a really solid place to just leave it. If you don't want to max it out, 25% chance is very, very good. Obviously, those additional 2 ranks double that from 25 to 50, so it makes a lot more sense to just go all the way. But if you don't want to invest all the way, you want to put your masteries in other things like, Collar Tech, which is a great mastery to run. I don't personally run it, but it is a great mastery for tech champions, especially what's the champion? Arcade has a great benefit with Collar Tech, and a couple other tech champions really benefit from it. Shocker is another one that benefits quite a bit. Just not having debate specials. It's a good mastery to run, but I highly, highly recommend running 5 out of 5 stand your ground. And then going to the proficiencies here, first things first, I run 4 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion. I would like to run 5 out of 5, but 5 out of 5 is very expensive, and maybe one day I'll pick it up because it definitely seems worth it and it seems useful. Well, no, it doesn't seem useful. I know it is useful. It's just I'm not super concerned right now. I think 4 out of 5 is perfect. I don't think it really needs to be any higher for me at the current moment. 8% power versus 12%. Obviously, that is a substantial increase. That's, half of the 4th rank is being added to the 5th rank. So going from 8% to 12% is pretty substantial. But 8% feels good. I like it at 4 out of 5. 5 out of 5 sometimes is a little out of control, where 4 out of 5 on offense specifically feels like the perfect balance of Mystic power. So I run 4 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion, and then the rest of the tree is pretty much the same for most people. Obviously, max parry, max limber, max stupefy, and 1 point in dexterity. You do not need any other points in dex. And then I also run 1 point in petrify. So petrify reduces power gain and regeneration by 10%. You can couple this with despair and healer reversal characters to reduce healing even further. And the good thing about Petrify is it's a sort of power control-esque ability because it reduces power gained from attacking or being attacked. So I like Petrify, and it is certainly a useful mastery. I used to run a lot more points in Petrify, but I've learned that running 3 out of 3 is kind of a detriment for a lot of matchups, especially when you want to be baiting special attacks. So I do not run 3 out of 3 anymore. Excuse my calendar flowing in the non-existent wind here. But that is my main setup, and now let's go over my alternative setup. So the other setup I run here, this is just a recoil setup. So obviously we have max liquid courage and double edge, and then of course running the recoil mastery with glass cannon. You'll notice that I do not run deep wounds at all for recoil, just because it's sort of hard to build out a more flexible mastery setup while running recoil because of how many points you have to commit to this tree right here. So that's offense. Defense, the only thing that's different between the main setup and the prior setup is more points in willpower, so you can regen from the recoil debuffs. 1 less point in inequity and then 2 less points in standard ground. That is the only difference. I still have the masteries. It's just at lesser or greater ranks, like willpower is maxed out while the other two are not maxed out. And then proficiencies, I have no points in Petrify here, and I only have 2 points in Mystic Dispersion for running Recoil. Again, when you're dealing damage in Recoil, like when you're using the Recoil Masteries, other character-specific abilities like the Mystic Dispersion, Collar Tech, stuff like that, Deep Wounds, not super impactful because of the damage increase you're getting from Recoil, so it's not a huge deal to not have these things maxed out. And then finally, my third setup here is just an alternative main / resonate. So this is my half recoil build where I run double edge with max coagulate. So the thing about coagulate that I really like is it kind of ties into inequity because it reduces the attack of the opponent and it reduces the bleed damage that you're taking. I'm sorry. The thing that I like about coagulate is the damage that you're taking from the bleed is reduced from the double edge mastery. I don't know what I was saying about inequity there. Completely ignore what I just said. I was going on a completely wrong train of thought. But running this setup is really nice because you basically take no damage from the bleed. So if you are running a bleed resistant character or just a normal champion in general, you barely take any damage from the bleed. You get a nice 30% attack bump from double edge. Of course, you have recoil as well. And you can just kind of go balls to the walls crazy, especially with the max willpower on top of max coagulate. You can really just stay super topped up, and if you don't need to use special attacks, you can get a lot of damage going. And then additionally, I have a couple other stray points here. I have a point in Pacify, and the reason I have a point in Pacify here is just this is an alternative setup, right? This is a setup where if I need a specific loadout for content or for a specific fight, then I can swap to my alternative main and I can get that going. Additionally, I don't believe I have it here. Yeah, I don't have it unlocked right now, but I have alternative main / resonate. So this mastery tree, I will sometimes swap to my normal setup, and then I'll just take some points out of Mystic Dispersion or Deep Wounds and put 1 point into Resonate. And that feels good, especially in matchups where you need multiple unique debuffs. Resonate is very nice to have. So I will swap this from time to time. I haven't done it in a while. I don't typically run Resonate, as you can see on my main here. I don't run Resonate at all for my main loadout, but Resonate's very useful, and it is definitely worth investing in if you have some extra spare carb cores to put into it. And then a mastery I didn't get to talk about, which is Suture. I don't even have it unlocked. Obviously, yeah, it's useful. Bleed duration gets reduced by 20%. That's good. That's useful, but not really necessary. So, that is going to do it for my mastery setup, my mastery video for 2025. Please let me know if you have any questions for, masteries, what masteries to invest in, where to put your points, where to put your cores, all of that. I'd love to chit chat about that and answer any questions you have in the comments down below. Thank you all again very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, and I really hope that you did, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps me out and it helps get the channel out there, broadcasting to a larger audience so more and more people can get informed by videos like these. So would be greatly appreciative if you were to hit that subscribe button and also hit like. That helps too. Once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.